So I must apologise for not putting out any videos recently. Been having a few life issues, sort of going through cancer and chemo at the moment. But I'm going to talk about something simple today, and that is installing a Garmin Zumo mounting point on the bike and actually applying a feed power or feed to the Zumo. And there are many ways of doing it. It needs 12 volts and 0. That's all it needs. There are a lot of other connections which I won't be using, and I must almost certainly be cutting them off for things like a traffic receiver and stuff, which I don't care about. I have the same mounting setup, and I will show you that in a moment, on my little Trat 500 that I use almost every day, and on the Norton Commando. And I figured I'd like to have one on the Trident because it's electric start, which makes it much easier for me. Getting old, I'm 72 now, so I figured in this case I didn't want the DC on all the time. I mean, the easiest way would be to connect the two power leads. It's got a fuse already in the unit. Just connect the power and ground to the battery, and away we go. However, I would prefer to have switched DC, and for that, I mean, again, the next obvious place to do that would be at the ignition switch. I will put up a photo of what the wiring in there. I wired this probably 30 years ago in a hurry, as always the case, and I didn't really pay a lot of attention to actually getting it as neat as I do nowadays. I have sort of wondered about going back and redoing it, but it's not broken, so I don't want to fix it. So I'm not going to go off the back of the ignition switch. The other option is to go down underneath the seat, and I have a fuse box here, of which 3 of the fuses, very much like a car, with various services on the bike fused separately. And I have a spare fuse that I have been using, or spare fuse outlet, I have been using as a spare fuse in case one of the others in the box, that's 4, blew, and I could then use that spare. But of course I can carry the spares in my pocket, so that's not a big issue, or in the toolbox. So the next idea is to take power from the fuse into a switch of some form, and then the output of the switch will drive the Zumo cradle, which will then have switched DC power. So when I switch the battery off, there's no power on the cradle. And there's various ways of doing that. I could use a relay. I could find a signal. There's a signal on the ignition circuit, which in this case is a tri-spark, and take a power feed from there. But potentially that puts up to 2 amps, because the Garmin, when it's charging, can draw 2 amps on the ignition circuit, and I don't really want to do that either. So my plan is to use the switch 12 volts to the ignition system as a trigger for another circuit that will actually apply power to the Garmin. and that trigger circuit will be a very low draw circuit, so it won't apply any extra load to the ignition circuit, and then the fuse will actually connect from the battery to the switch, and the switch will drive the Garmin. So that's my plan, and that's where we're going to go next. When mounting a electric start onto a T150, of course the engine is vertical rather than leaning forwards. Now the vent for the primary chain case comes up through here and would normally vent through this hole here up into the carburetor, but once you put the carburetors on, you can't get to that. The bowl is basically about half an inch away from the top of this. So I've made a cap which has an O-ring in it, which actually seals that, but I still want to actually vent the primary chain case, and my idea is to vent it into the carburetor inlet filter area. So I use a little bit of depression to suck the fumes out of there rather than trying to dump them out the back like on most tramps. So I have actually drilled a hole. I am actually using a right angle drill specifically for the purpose, and I have in fact this case a two-ended barb, which will actually go inside there once I've actually cut the end of the barb off. Got to shorten this area so that it will go in, and then the nut will be on the outside, and then once that actually sits in there, I could actually do it the other way, of course. I could actually sit it in there and put the nut on the inside, and then the pipe will actually clamp onto that. It's 10mm diameter internal, and will go up into the air cleaner, air filter on the carburetors. But I want to put the nut on the outside, I think. Not totally convinced by that, but I don't want the nut floated about, which is smaller than this. And this will be held in place so it can't go backwards by the pipe and the clamp. So that's where we are with this. The set square is to give me an angle to actually get the vertical face on that, and it's only held on with double-sided sticky tape, but it seems to do the job. And I had to modify the drill slightly. I bought this right angle drill to fit into the space that I have available, but I had to turn the end off because this is a 10mm chuck and this is a 12mm drill, so I had to just turn the end down a little bit. And I'm actually using a right angle drill because a normal drill is just too difficult to get in there, and I ended up having to take the battery tray off. Basically only one long bolt, one small bolt sits there to give me space, and that then enabled me to get to the back of this bolt that actually holds a relay on and holds a little bracket on for the Garmin switch, which we'll come back to. So it all sort of worked out together. The reason I didn't show the actual drilling is I got one hand with the vacuum pipe sucking the bits away, and then the other hand with the drill trying to actually get it to the right angle for this. Fitted the breather outlet into the primary chain case breather area. This is 10mm, and I've used some Permatex sealant, thread sealant, to actually lock it into place. The nut is on the outside, so that even if it comes loose, there should not be an issue with it disappearing down into the primary chain case or wherever. So I can now put the outer cover back on, and the pipe from here will go up into the air cleaner box, and there's another one of these in the air cleaner box, and it's just a straight link between the two. So I will put the outer cover back on, and let's just zoom in a little bit so you can, oops, a little bit too much, so it can actually focus. You can see that I had to shorten the spigot on this side to actually, because it was actually hitting the bottom of the box, and I also had to tweak the flange here so that it would just sit completely onto that. The cover is now fitted, and it makes quite a neat final solution to vent in the primary chain case, I think. The connection to the Garmin Cradle has a cable that was previously moulded, and had a block here that actually came out, and one of the wires go to the power supply, which I have routed as you've seen earlier. But within this cable there are quite a few connections for a microphone and for a USB connection and such like, and one of the things is to actually, because I'm not using all of those wires, is to insulate them. There is a screen within the cable which is connected in the cradle itself, and all of these connections need to be isolated from each other, insulated from each other, and secured so that they don't actually short out. Now the USB ones, one of the wires, the receive wire will be actually sitting high, and to start the USB transaction it's pulled low, so you obviously don't want to short that one out. Depending on the type of microphone, you can have power to the microphone through the cables as well. So what I have done is actually folded these wires back, difficult for you to see, and then put a heat shrink over it, and these are all different lengths, so that they don't touch each other, and they'll be held by a heat shrink over that, and that's the next step, is to finish that off and then seal all that up, and then make the two connections so that we then have power. Using the hot air gun, I can now shrink the heat shrink and hopefully get a good seal. So that didn't seal very well there, but I can actually put a thin bit of heat shrink around that and seal that. I have crimped the connectors from red to red, black to black, ready to drive the Garmin unit. Hopefully, to slide the heat shrink over the top to protect those connectors, and I'm not going to shrink it. I am going to put zip ties on so that if I do need to disconnect it I can get to it, and the heat shrink will just provide some anti-vibration insulation, and obviously protect against damage and shorting out, and of course should hopefully stop moisture getting in. As a final test, we have the satnav plugged in, all ready to go. So when I switch the ignition on, I've got power onto the bike, and the Garmin unit has booted up, showing that it's powering up, and we'll let it fully power up. Okay, so when I switch it off now, the Garmin unit will say no power, turn off. That is showing that the power from the battery is switched to the Garmin unit, and when switched off, power is removed, which is what I wanted.